so making sure that we have the ability to get builds from place to place, and people who do the development, and I think that the biggest change that I'd say that we've seen, or at least I've personally observed, is that there are far more video conference calls than there ever were. Even though we might have conference calls, I think that in the past it was mostly voice only or sound only, and now I think as part of the coping, it's good to see people, and many more people are there with with visuals and audio from time to time.
My dog had some comments that he wanted to add in this. So. This is one of the side effects of working from home, folks.
It is. But, the number of people's kids come into videos, and you don't get to see that normally in the office. So now we'll have a good sense of our colleagues' family life and progression.
There's something oddly comforting about it, though. Even though it's disruptive a little bit and whatever, it's humanizing, and that's really important. Yeah, I mean, to your point about video conference, we have a rule that everyone must be have video on, and it's made a huge difference. I will say my own observation on work from home is that the hardest thing, the two hardest things, and sort of teeing off what you said, is to have been maintaining a shared vision, because I'm in the process of developing a game that is heading towards soft launch, going through some pretty major changes. And one of the things that I've noticed is with not being in the office, you get vision drift, where the picture, the idea of what the game is in my head may not be what the idea of the game is in your head. And so I've had to work extra hard to keep everyone kind of aligned on vision and not start to diverge, and really monitor that. And I think the other thing that you touched on is just maintaining that sense of team. What is a studio if there's no studio to go to? And I had my first all hands yesterday with my game team, and just spent the whole hour really just like giving shout outs and, telling people how much I appreciate them. And even just saying to people like, look guys, what we're doing right now is hard. We all know it's hard. Just recognizing that, I think, has been really, helpful to people, just recognizing that, naming the reality of the situation. So right. Definitely, I think for game creators, managing the human side of this is important as ever. I
agree. It's almost a requirement to keep a few minutes available at the beginning and at the end of the meeting for a little bit of a check-in as you get going. Because I think this is really different than just what work from home used to be, right? We have work from home policies, across our company, and people we're able to spend some time at home, if that was where they worked easier. But this is different, it's like, because now there's spouses and husbands and wives and partners and roommates at home also, and kids and dogs, and it is a different environment that we're having to work from home in. And I think it's important that we have that empathy and compassion for somebody who's maybe balancing feeding their kids as well as taking a conference call at that time.
Yeah, we're getting some questions in Q&A. Someone asking, are there preferred tools or methods that you can use? Mostly, I will say, a lot of what I've been doing is Google Meetups. It's well integrated in the G Suite. Because all of the Google apps are fundamentally collaborative. It makes collaboration a lot easier remotely. But we have a policy, and you sort of brought it up about how do you, keep the human side. Something that my team is doing is 9 to 10 every morning. We just have coffee talk, and it's sort of, we just all log on and have a coffee. There's no agenda. And it just simulates that first hour of getting to work, where we bullshit about what's in the news. We talk about, movies people may have seen, like just keep it light. And then we talk about, okay, what are we going to do today? You know, and I think that's worked pretty well. There are whiteboarding tools that we're also using. I'm blanking on the name of the tool, but those types of things have also been helpful. But are there any particular tools or techniques that you're using on your end to keep things moving?
Well, we have, I would say more of what you're seeing now, we use Teams internally. And so that's, is our broad video communication suite. But the development teams already have, because they're used to working with remote studios, they already have a lot of the, typical collaboration tools in place, whether that be Slack or, or whatever, that is allowing them to share documentation across the different studios. Because when you have, 5, 6, 7, 8 studios working, you have that vision drift problem immediately. Right? And so we've had to create repositories of where people can find all that reference material and keep that up to date on a regular basis, just for us to be able to make the games that we make today. And so just when people are working from home, they still have access to that same repository. So I think to that end, we didn't have to. That part was somewhat set up for us already. The increase in usage, I think, of for us Teams and everybody else's video conferencing solutions is what's I think going to be the new masterclass. We're all going to come out as pros in the whole thing, and I think that's good, right? It's more beneficial, have this be a long-term impact that we see each other more and that we're aware of our communications more.
Yeah. As an aside, my son is making his first video game in his game design program in school. He's a junior in high school, and so this is his first game. And of course, it's hard because it's their first game. But he's learning how to keep his team of high schoolers motivated while they're on spring break, technically, and actually contributing to the game. And I get a chuckle because I go in the basement and he's down there setting up Unity teams and getting a sauna going and all these kind of things. So what I tell him is, I'm like, listen, man, making games is hard, and if you want to be, and you either learn to love it or you hate it, and this is a pretty good litmus test for, do you want to be in this industry? Because these are the types of challenges and curveballs you get thrown, and learning how to motivate people through difficulty is a big part of the game. And if you can get good at that, then you can be very successful in this business. So,
right. I can just see you walking downstairs and saying, "Welcome to my world."
Well, it's funny, we're having the same problems on our projects, so we commiserate, in between video conference calls. It just reminds me that as I tell him, it's even though you become an adult and you get a lot of experience, it doesn't get easier, and the human side of this is always the hardest thing. So let's talk a little bit about players. So movie theaters closed, theme parks closed, people looking for entertainment, and distraction in a tough time. It's really streaming and video games, right? What's going on with the player community right now?
Well, they're very active, right? Which is probably no big surprise. And we're trying to do our part as well. You may have seen that we kicked off an initiative which is we call play your part and play at home. And we're basically making a series of games available for free, a series of games available for open on a free weekend, put all of our trials up. Right now, last weekend we gave away Child of Light for people just to keep forever. We had an open weekend on Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and we have another one going on right now with Rayman Legends. If you go to the Uplay website, you can download that and keep it forever. So I think we view it as partly our responsibility to make sure that there's things that people can do. We're all adapting and changing to being at home more and to being around the rest of the family more, and I think having a variety of alternatives is important. I know you mentioned streaming and video games. I've also seen my kids breaking out the old family board games Even a deck of cards was out the other night. I can't think of the last time I saw cards out in our household. So I think that people will find things to do, find engagement, and I think that's the important part of what we can do from the video game side is keep people playing together, right?
Yeah.
And giving them something, giving our players the ability to keep trying and playing new games as well.
Yeah. My family's been playing the Jackbox games together at nights, and that's been fun. Yeah, I just wanted to note a few of the records that are being set in our industry right now. So before we got on, I Googled games records. And so record concurrent users on Xbox Live, Game Pass, Mixer, Steam, record concurrent users with over 20 million people playing at the same time. 30 million downloads of Call of Duty Warzone, which is the new free-to-play Call of Duty. Apex Legends, record concurrence and record users. Counter-Strike, 1 million concurrents, so people playing at once. CSGO, most watched esports tournament, one of the top of all time. Telecom Italia reported a 70% increase in data usage driven by Fortnite and the Chinese streamer Douyu. Record Switch sales for Animal Crossing, 2 million units in the first 3 days. So, clearly people are playing games. Andreessen Horowitz, which normally doesn't invest in games, has started doing so, and their premise is that games are the new social network. I think that's what we're seeing right now, right?
I think so. I think so, and particularly when you're looking at games where there's some interactivity, they're getting it seems even more of a boost. We certainly notice our multiplayer games are going. I've heard stories about how people are creating events in Animal Crossing as a way to connect with other people, and I think that's the best undertone that I've seen of all of this is that there is an outreach from people from person to person to stay connected, and games are a way that people can do that.
Yeah, I think that we multiplayer games have been a phenomenon for a really long time, of course, and we typically think about those in terms of shooters or shooters being the biggest genre. But increasingly, folks like the Epic folks have been thinking about with Fortnite, really thinking about that in terms of the metaverse, right? And so, doing things like the Marshmallow concert and other types of integrations, moving beyond the thinking of just run around and shoot people, and thinking about it more like an MMO, bringing back some of the old, a lot of the things we've learned from the MMO era. I get a sense that what's going on now is going to make us think even more as game makers about emergent gameplay and social behavior, and that those types of things are going to, become more front and center than maybe they've been in the past, simply because of the way people are playing these games emergently now.
Right. And I think, when you talk about emergent gameplay, it kind of leads into the question that Alex asked in the Q&A, which is, what can we also do to give people some tools to make the interactions that are going on now a bit more fun? I remember a company that I was part of many years ago. We had a multiplayer gaming service, and there were chat rooms. And in the chat room, we had this amazing feature. We thought it was amazing, where we put up a shared whiteboard where you could plan how you were going to play the next game. Somebody was going to go in from this side, and you go in from that side. Well, what we found is most people use that shared whiteboard to play Hangman, or tic-tac-toe. And it had nothing to do with the games that they were waiting in the lobby to play, but it was just a tool that they could use to engage with each other and have a bit more fun. And that's an interesting concept. Is how could I know that Teams has add-ins that you can do, add-in programs. I assume Zoom and other people do as well. I wonder if some of the quick game developers could cook up something where we can have a little bit more fun in our video chats. Maybe that some of the snap type overlays, or who knows.
It's coming. It's coming. I'm telling you, it's coming. So let's talk a little bit about business models. We're obviously going to enter a recessionary period where people are not going to be doing as well as maybe they have been in the past couple of years. Money's going to be tighter. You know, in a premium industry, you know, where you know, if you're only selling $60 games, you know, fewer people are going to be able to afford that. But there's really been an explosion of business models in our industry over the last couple of years. You have, you know, you have free to play, which is the dominant model on mobile, which is the platform I do most of my work on. But it's becoming increasingly more common on PC and console, especially, you know, with Fortnite and Apex Legends. You have subscription services that for a reasonable price you get access to a lot of different games. You know, you have you know, free downloads as part of those programs where, you know, where for a period of time a game becomes free and gets downloaded a zillion times and builds up its player base. You know, how do you see the agility of the games business moving into a period where people still want entertainment but maybe don't have as much money as they did before?
Well, I think we have to pay attention to the players and offer a choice, and that's you know, that's kind of how we've approached it so far. Although I won't say it's necessarily as balanced, you know, as we're heading towards. But we certainly have the premium side of the games, right? But you know, because we mentioned it talking the other day, that we also have Brawlhalla, which is a free-to-play game across lots of platforms, and that's a fun multiplayer game. And you know, we have our own subscription service, Uplay Plus, you know, where for $15 a month you're able to play, you know, all of our new and all of our back catalog games. You know, you mentioned Game Pass was doing well before. You're right. There's a variety of subscription models and of ways of accessing content. And like I said at the beginning, we're also at this point, you know, helping, you know, by giving away games and giving away time on games. But I think that what our responsibility is from a publisher standpoint is bring forth great games, but also bring them in a variety of business models where players can play, depending upon their situation. If you can't spend any money, then you certainly can play free-to-play games. If you prefer a different mechanism, the choice is the key, I think.
Yeah, I think the beautiful thing about our industry is that we can be much more inventive about business models. And you know, when I think about a movie, you know, there's only so many ways to sell that, right? What we have now, you know, what the movie industry has had that we have not had until recently is a windowing strategy. You know, typically old games, you know, were old hat and nobody wanted to play them, and maybe, you know, 20 years later there's some nostalgia for them and they come back in some kind of, you know, those little micro NES type, you know, consoles. But in general, you know, old games go away, and I think what we're seeing now is you know, this windowing strategy, and also the idea of, because I think especially a lot of people are on Unity and Unreal, it becomes, you know, easy to upgrade the graphics, you know, port to the, you know, use all the new stuff in the new generation of consoles, re-release your game. You know, I was interested in the idea that that when Netflix released the Witcher TV series,
Right.
that the Witcher had more. Witcher 3 had more people playing it because of the Netflix series when it was re-released than it had when the game was originally released. And so it just shows that there's this long tail emerging for our games, but we also can be a lot more creative with how we distribute or, you know, how we price and how we distribute in those windows. I mean, the television and film industry, you know, you have subscription VOD, and you have AVOD, which is advertising video on demand, which is sort of the equivalent of free to play in a way, but there really isn't something like free to play for film and television. You know, the difference with free to play, and we talked about this a little yesterday, is that part of the misnomer is I think people get really caught up in the idea of whales. But really what free to play does is it allows people to play flexibly. They can pay as much or as little as they want, whenever they want, when they have money. And they can continue to play when they don't. And so, I think that's a very interesting phenomenon, an interesting aspect of our industry that's going to become, important.
Yeah, so Chris, you mentioned we don't really have a windowing strategy. I would say that our windowing strategy that has evolved is one of price and promotion. I mean,
Right.
I'm sure that many of us have participated in deep discount sales where you buy something because you didn't play that game at the time. Now it's a couple years old, but it's only $9 now, so you're going to get that, and that becomes part of your digital debt that you're going to look forward to playing, some year in the future. That those games, tend to go down over time, which actually even makes the economics of the game better. Let alone when you think about, okay, when we release an Assassin's Creed that's got over 100 hours of play, for $60, that's a pretty low cost of entertainment per hour to start with. And then if you're picking up an Assassin's Creed from a year or two ago, it's somewhere, $15 to $30 or something. That's even a better, economy. So yeah, it's a good value, playing games, both playing the free-to-play games and playing the premium games. This might be a good time to have Ned put up that survey.
Yeah, I think so. So Ned, if you want to share the poll, one of the questions in there is around monetization and how you prefer to pay for games. So Ned, if you could throw the poll up for the group, please participate in the poll, and we'll be sharing out the results at the end of the session. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, your perspective as Ubisoft is primarily a AAA game maker. You do have mobile, you do have some games like Brawlhalla that are free to play. My world has been much more in free to play, lots of free to play games, but also in sort of lower cost, I guess you would call them AA, console and PC games. One of the things that I've seen from the indie standpoint is that there's a much more attractive market now for smaller, shorter games. My friend Sean Krankel over at Night Dive Studios, specializes in the Oxenfree, After Party, specializes in these, call it 4 to 6 hour, games. Those games in the past, in a $60 box model just weren't viable. But in a world where, you can sell them at maybe a $20 price instead of a $60 price, where you can put them in the Game Pass. And then, one of the things that Microsoft tells us is that when people play Game Pass or buy Game Pass, they play more games overall. So they're not just playing the same amount of hours, but they're actually playing more hours, and they're playing more games because there's no friction. I can try out a game, I can try out a whole variety of games. But when you start doing that, people are not going to spend as much time in all the games. And so it does open up the opportunity to do some of these smaller games that maybe never would have been, greenlit before. How does Ubisoft think about this? Do you focus primarily on AAA and sort of larger 100-hour type games, or are you thinking about smaller games too?
I think that's both is the short answer, and it kind of depends on which part of Ubisoft you're thinking of. Because we do have a mobile division, as you mentioned, and they put out a number of games, and they're definitely focused on games as it fits in a mobile world, not a 100-hour game there, in fact, many of those are free-to-play games where we hope that people can play and enjoy them for a long time, but the sessions are short, or the game, the storyline is relatively short. We've done on the AAA side of things, we've done both large games like Assassin's Creed and the Far Cry series and so on, and Division. We also, like the game we gave away last weekend, Child of Light, was a relatively short game. It was a Japanese RPG game that we felt was delightful. It never sold that particularly well, but it was a critically well reviewed, so we were happy to share it with people. I would say though that because of the structure of our company, we're more focused on the larger, 40-hour plus games in the making. And then, when I say 40-hour plus, it's not necessarily that they all have a story the whole way through, but it is designed for a longer period of engagement. Rainbow Six Siege, for example, is a good example of a game as a service where you play and you continue to play over the years. There's new operators that come on, and occasionally new maps and things like that. But the joy is more in the play and the competition than it is in completing a storyline.
So I have a little bit of a left field question for you, kind of based on, because here at the house, my son is a huge Rainbow player. How do you think about the Clancy verse as a franchise outside of the game space, and is it something you're contemplating building into something like the next Avengers? Because it seems to me that you really have the potential to do that. It's a thought that I tried to actually get Universal to contact you guys to talk about, and then we saw that you're developing the division, I think, for Netflix.
Right.
How are you thinking about brand extensions of your games, particularly the Clancy stuff and anything else outside of the game space?
Well, the only thing, that by brand extension, by movies and things like that, the only thing we have to talk about now is the division. What I can say is that, you've probably seen, we've started experimenting more in crossovers within our games, right? There was recently a Sam Fisher, who, from Splinter Cell side, who made his appearance in Ghost Recon Breakpoint. And by sharing those across, we did that with the Division, we did that with Ghost Recon Wildlands. By sharing those brands within the Clancy world, we're finding that people are really responsive to that and are using it as an opportunity to kind of blend those worlds. The stories aren't tying together, but it's just the nostalgia of that character in a setting that pulls people back together again.
I want the movie that is the Ghost Recon Rainbow Division team up movie. That's the one that I'm the Avengers Endgame of.
Okay, wait, say that again now.
The Avengers Endgame of Clancyverse. That's what I
Okay, I got it. If that happens, we'll give you credit.
I just love to see the movie. We were talking about players earlier, and some of the things that Ubisoft has done to help players through difficult times. And you were talking yesterday about about some of the things that you did when Notre Dame burned down.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about, how as a publisher you're there there's a civic role that you play in helping the community get past tough times.
Yeah, we, so our company, as you probably know, is headquartered in Paris, and so it was particularly poignant when Notre Dame burned. And the good news from our standpoint was that we had just done Assassin's Creed Origins not too long before that, where we had done a huge scale model of Notre Dame inside. In fact, that was one of our first games that was done on 1-to-1 scale instead of an augmented scale. But from a player standpoint, what you saw in the game was really to scale with what was there. That meant we did a bunch of high-res imaging of the church, and in fact, that high-res imaging is what they're using to reconstruct the church today, because it was the most recent and the most thorough of any form of photography or surveying of the church. And then that's we just gave that to our data to them, and on top of making a donation ourselves as a company to the relief efforts. What we also did is we offered that game to people and just opened it up and made it free and said, look, if you enjoyed the game, please make a donation to the restoration fund, not through us, not as a way to get the game or anything like that. Just take the game. Millions of people took the game and have played the game, and from what we've been told, because we don't know how many people donated, but the relief effort was very, very pleased with what happened. And now we even took and made a VR experience out of that portion of the game. So you can in VR you can go and see Notre Dame the way it was.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, the things that we're doing now with game assets and data are really interesting. I mean, I worked on Jurassic World Alive, which was the first game to use the Google Maps for games API.
Mhm.
And they have stuff in that API that hasn't, that I don't think any game maker has really fully tapped into. I mean, they've got models of whole cities. You can use their game data to generate say a map of New York, if you wanted to, that would be a realistic map of New York. And so, the way that the things that we're able to do with, with the scale of these game assets and virtual assets now are just phenomenal. And as more games or more animation is starting to be made in things like Unreal Engine. It's becoming a tool in the animation world outside of the games industry. So it's amazing how this technology that used to just be, something that was for entertainment, can do all these other things too and be useful in rebuilding Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should point out, because I was just was pointed out in the chat. Thank you very much. It was Assassin's Creed Unity, not Origins. Origins was set in Egypt, and had similar high res imagery, but done things in Egypt, not in Paris. So thank you, Anne.
So somebody asking, what do we think of the long-term, or are the long-term consequences of COVID on video gaming and viewing? I'll let you start.
Well, I think we're probably too early to know really what those long-term consequences will be. Again, coming back to, I hope that we've been able to do the best that we can for our employees and make sure that they're safe, so that there's not a long-term personal consequence, or that we've made that as minimal as possible going forward. And I think that's where we as a society should be focused. And then, but from a gaming standpoint, I think this may introduce more people to gaming, and certainly gaming in a multiplayer format. Because anecdotally, I hear more employees' families who are playing games together now than normally. Now, maybe we just never had those conversations before. I don't think that's true. But there's more of it comes back to, as I was saying before, there's more of a impetus on togetherness, it seems now. And if that is part of the consequence, then I'll look at that as a silver lining. That it's brought people to a state of togetherness.
Yeah, that's extremely well said. I think it's I think we play a role in bringing people together during this time, and however we can do that, and the more that we think about that as designers, it is going to cause us to make different choices in how we design our games in the future, because I think we're going to be thinking more about this emotional connection component, and not just about not just about the mechanics of the the meta mechanics of the game.
Right.
You mentioned earlier, hey, maybe somebody should be doing game in Zoom. I think that's gonna happen, and you already see people with the Jackbox games playing these games, because you don't have to you can play through the internet. So right. So as long as you can jack in your Apple TV or whatever into your Zoom or your laptop, you can as long as you can get the game in there, you can get people playing together. And I think now people are kind of doing it the hacker way. I think that's going to become more standard, and we're going to be thinking, how is video conference part of gaming, so that you don't have to be in the same place to play together, and feel a presence, not just right. Hear a voice over your headphones. So if folks have additional questions, please send them in the chat, and we'll continue to address them as they come along. So Chris, what's coming up this year for Ubisoft? What should we be looking forward to? Give us something to look forward to.
Well, here's what you should look forward to. We unfortunately, as an industry, the physical E3 got canceled. But we know that E3 is a time that we all look forward to. Seeing the new games that are going to be coming for the coming season, and we want that to be no different. So we're hard at work trying to figure out what can we do digitally that will bring that type of an experience into people's homes, so they can still have that to look forward to. Now, I don't know whether it happens in in June or July or August or something, but trying to find a way to make it so people can have that experience and look forward to the games that are going to be released in the new year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a year with no GDC and no E3. It's been it's been a very there's for those of us who are in the industry, those moments were a big part of all of our getting together, seeing one another, reestablishing connections with old friends, talking shop.
Right.
And I definitely feel it's been a blow for sure. But the thing about gamers is that they are they are incredibly passionate, and E3 or no E3, I mean, most people who get their news from E3 never go to E3. And
Right.
so there's a lot of ways for us to get our games get the message out about our games. And thankfully, I mean, we have an entire cottage industry of press that's, Polygon and, IGN, and, we have a whole industry of press that's dedicated to our medium. And so we're not completely dependent on those physical events, even though I think they're missed.
Yeah, I think they'll be missed as well. I share many of the same, moments of bonding with people you've known for years in the industry. And now we'll be doing that over video for a while. And I think then the key is, how do we bring those experiences, the joy of seeing a new game, or the surprise of a reveal, directly to people, where they are in their homes. So we'll keep working on that, and we'll do something. We're all looking at that as an industry. How do we get to that place, where we can talk about that. So I have no doubt that's certainly something to look forward to coming.
Yeah.
Now it seems like, Chris, I don't know if you have the Q&A panel open.
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I have the chat open, not the Q&A.
Yeah, down below there's a Q&A button.
Okay, I got it.
Maybe I can. You tell me if you want me to try to answer a couple of those, or.
Let's see. Have we seen an increase in the number of gamer customer support inquiries? And they're asking for specifics. I don't know that that you can get into specific numbers, but have you seen an increase in customer support inquiries?
Yeah, you're right on the specific numbers. We can't really dive into that, but we have seen no greater number than the normal percentages that we get, right? So we're not seeing people having exceptional problems or anything like that. I think there's we have seen, I think everyone has seen in the news where from Netflix has reduced some of their streaming rates, and so has some of the other streaming companies. And I think there's been an impact there as far as what people have been able to do and see streaming wise. It hasn't really caused a problem from the gaming side, because people are either downloading their games or they're playing them on their consoles. And so it does bring up the question of streaming, though, and because we're active on two streaming platforms right now, so on Stadia and on GeForce Now, and I would say that we have no increase in concern or customer service inquiries from those services either. So apparently it's adequate to be able to play the games across those services as well.
Yeah, so someone asked a question in the chat about what's the reality of the streaming services, and how I guess how successful do we see them, or how viable do we see them being for core gamers? I don't know if you want to. I have my own thoughts on that. I don't know if you want to touch on it.
Well, sure. We I think it's probably apparent from what we're doing in the market. We are big believers in streaming, and a number of our games are on both of those platforms, Stadia and GeForce Now, and they play well. The question on how well they play is a question of the bandwidth to your home, right? If you have poor bandwidth to your home, or if you have poor Wi-Fi inside your home, then you're going to have a challenge. And if you have decent connectivity, then you're going to have a great experience. I notice for myself, when I play games that are on streaming, what surprises me the most is how quick I can start a session, and then be into the gameplay. And again, with the adequate bandwidth in your home, there's I can't tell a difference. And we look at it now. Of course, Chris, you look like you're frozen there, so maybe we're having a bandwidth problem.
Back. I'm back. Can you see me?
Oh, yep. Now I can see you.
Okay.
Oh, sure enough, I would talk about that right at that moment. But we also think that it's a way to reach more people who don't necessarily have a console or a gaming PC in their home anymore. Or
yeah. Yeah, I see Ned come in.
I was gonna pop in here and share our poll results.
Okay.
Can everybody see the results now? I just hit share results. We had really good participation on the poll. We've had on and off, we've been over 100 participants on this, and probably close to 150 people have been on the webinar today. And about 68% participated in the poll. Interestingly, 43% of the people on the webinar today described themselves in the entertainment industry, 43%, then going to 22 in the game industry, 19 in technology, and then 10 and 6 in services, and none. I think this is kind of interesting, and I wanted to ask you guys about something in this regard. I work with a company called Control Movie that offers technology solutions for kind of audience collaborative cinematic experiences. It's kind of multi-optional stories. There have been different attempts at this over the years. Are you guys seeing kind of interesting entertainment plays that combine game mechanics with kind of the business models of gaming?
Well, I think by its nature, I mean, and Chris can talk to this easily too. I mean, the game development relates very much to the business model. So, developing on mobile today, for example, you wouldn't be developing a big, long story campaign, based on a $60 premium game. So the mobile gameplay is much more focused on free to play. So you're going to build your game to that extent, right? And because on the other hand, we have access to a good premium distribution channel, both through download and through retail. We build games that match that business model, right? And we can make some assumptions, when a player has played, paid for a game, what they're going to be doing. Now at the edges, I think that's probably where experimentation still is going on. I know that we've been always kind of an early adopter of technologies and of business models, and there's a lot of experimentation that goes on. Some of it doesn't get out the door because it doesn't it's not resonating, but some does.
I would say that there's definitely an opportunity for story-driven games again. The trend for the longest time was to move away from story. Call of Duty seemed to cut 10 or 20 hours of their story mode every year until they got down to none. It was very when Battlefront launched, Star Wars Battlefront. The first one had no story mode, and a lot of fans, were disappointed by that. I think what has happened is, as the multiplayer games have become so popular, things like Fortnite that have no campaign mode at all, that has pushed story into separate game types. But we're also seeing, it's not a new phenomenon, but the interactive storytelling on Netflix has actually been quite popular. A lot of people will remember Black Mirror Bandersnatch, which I think was just a brilliant take on that medium and IP. But at NBC Universal, DreamWorks had multiple interactive projects that in the works that they for Netflix. I know they've done Bear Grylls and a few other things for Netflix. So you know, Netflix has built an entire engine or an entire tool set for making these types of interactive formats. I think the challenge for Netflix is because they are an app and not a game. The types of mechanics that you can employ are inherently limited, and so it's going to lead to kind of very one-note interactivity, which I think may lead to people getting stagnant. You know, one of the things that Telltale experienced is that a lot of players felt like their format was too formulaic, and that you know, choice-based narrative got, you know, kind of boring over time. I am very interested in this fusion of story-driven, you know, movie-like experience. You know, you're going to see. I mean, Cyberpunk is going to be, you know, Cyberpunk 2077 is going to be, you know, the biggest story game of the year whenever it comes out. But you know, but I am interested in this idea of cinematic or really high fidelity, story-driven games that are not. You know, that are not, you know, a zillion hours long, that are somewhere, you know, maybe a little longer than a movie, but, you know, can tell a story in a reasonable amount of time, and that are interactive and potentially multiplayer. But where the mechanics are such that you're trying to go after a broader audience, and that I think is a real opportunity for the game space because of what you can now do with real-time rendering and, you know, ray tracing and all those kind of things. You can produce something that is at a very high fidelity, and looks like a movie but is interactive, and I think some interesting things are going to come out of that.
Terrific. Well, listen, we pledge to end this every day at 12:50. Chris and Chris, you guys have been wonderful today. Really appreciate having you on the show. Tomorrow, our show is on the Rights Tech Roundtable, and we'll be getting into all the issues around rights trading, which will be very interesting. And so join us back tomorrow at noon. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Chris. Thank you all.
See you guys.